Hello dear friends, this is the third video which is devoted exclusively to the Nina prophecies, and something which I found out yesterday only in relation to the Mount Athos prophecy from the previous episode. In a document outlining the key targets of the ecumenical so-called church, they have listed unrestricted access to Mount Athos as one of their key targets. I did not hear the word bridge mentioned as such, but looking at the location of the very monasteries, bridge is the most appropriate access for mass tourism. So I must say, sadly, that this is one more clue that these prophecies are most likely true. So I will start directly with the prophecies about the Great War, the Third World War, assuming that you have already watched the previous episodes, otherwise many things will be probably misunderstood. So all the other prophets who describe the Great War as seen in their own country, they say that it will start all of a sudden, out of the blue. But since Nina was given an overview in a planetary scale of the events, she sees it as a natural at that time culmination of all the civil wars, which were also very well described in the other prophecies. So the Third War will be carefully planned, very carefully planned, and ignited by the same party who planned and sponsored both sides of the previous world wars. By the time Russia would be very weak, the blood-drinking so-called communists would have taken over, and the military would be very, very weak, which is already the case, and I gave details in one of the videos about Alexander Paramonov. So as far as the first official rockets which start the war, she sees them somewhere in Yugoslavia and also in the Arabic Peninsula. And she saw the incident very carefully, she says, because the tectonic plates were already dancing at that time. And it happens so that during such cracks in the earth and earthquakes, some of the missiles of this the western side of the war, they actually fire by themselves, so without a command, because of the earthquakes. And she sees those young IT professionals wondering, we didn't press any button, how did that happen? But the truth is that by then, I mean, the plans were already at such a stage that they were already pointing the missiles at the targets, so they would do it anyway. She doesn't give any details in terms of the development of the battles or the different fronts, because she sees this as just simply an organized mass massacre. Same as the other prophets, by the way, only death will be victorious in this war. She did not even mention, because the war will be East against West, she didn't even mention that the East will lose. I guess because she was talking to a Russian audience, and many people in Russia are nationalistic, so they may get like hateful towards her for telling them such news, I assume. So this is the current coverage of NATO. With dark blue are the proper NATO countries, and with the light blue are supporters. But this will be the future coverage of NATO, the way she saw it. I don't know when all countries will eventually join that party under, I don't know what exactly name, but it was also in other prophecy that in the beginning Russia will have some sort of allies in the Slavic countries, but eventually there will be zero of them. And she described how first Uzbekistan and then eventually all the governments of the ex-Soviet republics and other allies, they will all abandon Russia. And that's what will be required from them, so to say, after their governments sign that. The populations of these countries will be no longer needed in the plans of the war organizers. So this population, they have different programs for exterminating them, camping. That was for the ex-Soviet republics. They will be sending also people with bribes to the district heads of the various districts in Russia, grooming them that you see you deserve to be a prime minister, a president of a country, so you better become independent. I didn't understand well at which point will this happen, but this will be also there. So more or less the way Russia will be overtaken is that they will say, you see, this is a gift for you to China, and initially the Chinese will occupy it peacefully. Eventually it will turn into a race. From the west it will be Western Europe, from the east will be China, and there will be a race who will get bigger chunks of Russia. And Nina explained that God, because as I told you, there was all the time at the background God's commentary. He said that I'm doing this on purpose so that people in Russia will mature and stop hoping on anything central, any external concept to save them. Externally, there will be no hope in view whatsoever from any side, and then people, as a last resort, will be finally forced to turn inside and look into their hearts, finally. At a later stage, she also said that there will be a force which will not allow the Chinese to cross the Ural Mountains. They will have to stop there. There will be some miracle related to Archangel Michael that will stop them, and part of them will convert to godliness after seeing the miracle. But I didn't understand when exactly will this happen. Also, something inside me makes this connection with this miracle with Archangel Michael and Otrok Vyacheslav. So I'm not sure what makes me make this connection, but there could be some. There is some resemblance because Otrok Vyacheslav narrated while he was alive how his holy remains will be interacting with the situation. He said that he will interact and he will do a lot, and then people will understand who he is. But the connection to exactly this episode, this is purely my idea. She was very sad because she saw those large fields covered with the bodies of the entire Russian army. And that very same army about which many other prophecies say that not a single person will come back. And she saw in those fields her young nephews. She was very disturbed by this sight, to see them laying dead there. And she really cried out to God, is there no way to stop this horrible thing? What can I do so that this doesn't happen? This is terrible, she said. And God replied to her, is it more intelligent to look at the sad scene of their bodies which are now lifeless and feel nothing, instead of looking at their living souls which are now in the highest heaven, by the way, he said. These young men, he said, were actually very good souls, and that's why they had a relatively easy way to clean off the last remaining dirt off their souls, because they died instantly. So there was no major suffering involved in that respect, but the symbolic decision of their soul when everything was planned to sacrifice their human body, especially a young human body, is a major sacrifice to make. Such atonement was the easiest path for them, and that's what they chose. And then about the huge asteroid which may hit the central parts of the southern half of US. According to her, that is somewhere uh, midway the Great War. And actually, the people, the uh, scientists, whoever has remained so far, they will know about it well beforehand. They will also organize like some sort of space missions, which are supposed to meet the heavenly body halfway and collide with it before it hits the earth. So there will be a good knowledge beforehand what is coming, but then suddenly the war will start and people, they will simply forget about all this and they will do nothing. And the collision may take place if the population of US doesn't manage beforehand to stop its leaders from organizing quarrels around the globe. So Nina explicitly said that this is a conditional prophecy. It's not sure to come. But if it does, it will submerge large parts of US, South America, Australia, New Zealand, Cuba, Cyprus, and UK. It seems, I'm saying only it seems, around the same time will also gradually submerge. Partially, it seems the southern parts are most likely to get flooded, and maybe parts of Scotland, I'm not sure. But Irmeyer also seems to place the UK sinking in the time frame of the Great War. So Nina says there are countries in which the people are very, very polite, and this is really true because I've lived different places, and I can tell you, in some regions of the world, people are extremely polite. I feel quite ashamed there myself. So in the countries which are currently polite, the difference between the people, the way people behave now and then, will be even more striking because she noticed that people will become extremely evil in personal dealings in those times. Almost all of them will abandon all kindness. But if any of you, when this starts happening, remembers this video, please also remember these words of mine. Don't forget about kindness, even if all people are mean to you and are even killing you. Because are we gonna die sooner or later in this incarnation is actually not extremely important looking at the overall countless births we are taking. But what is the important is our actions. And when we die and start looking at the important stuff, you will be ashamed of your unkind words just because of some temporary body or some temporary situation. The situation and the body, they will vanish anyway, but the root thoughts, words, and hopefully not actions, because then it gets even more serious, that will remain forever stamped in your soul. So don't be like polite all your life because of culture or because it's natural for you and then fail on the big exam. Do not go down that path, but instead, as you see the prophecies happening, it should only make you more enthusiastic, to make it urgent to work on yourself and become a truly kind and compassionate person. There is a huge church bell called the Tsar Kolokol. It's very famous in Russia. It will fall down spontaneously around the time when the Jal is being coronated. The event was covered in previous episodes. Also, before that happens, all these saints or the church icons which hold scrolls in their hands, these scrolls, she says, will kind of come to life, and on them it will be written the truth about the great deceiver, the Antichrist. The spontaneously, naturally mummified remains of another saint called Sergei Radnersky will also miraculously resurrect, but then they will be kept in the central lavra where all the monks would have already taken the side of evil, and he will resurrect in front of everybody, but he will not bless the traitors, and he will simply walk away without saying anything or giving any blessings. And after that happens, the holy springs with blessed water, usually related to various saints, will simply start drying up. She says that currently people do not understand them and do not give them the proper respect and importance which they deserve. So when they start getting dry, that will be a sign that even times which are more sinister even than the Great War are about to start, because usually people give importance to prophecies about world wars, but what she saw coming after that will be far, far worse than the war. But before Dajjal can finally get coronated, he will have to remove the last obstacle on his path, and that will be the pious Russian king, which a voice from the skies will announce. There are so many prophecies already in many religious people are even doing rituals for this king, and he will come indeed before the Dajjal. This will be the times after the war. According to her, it will be very warm at that time. Um, People will start dressing historically. Everything she sees, footwear, is as if taken from historic illustrations. People no longer wear modern clothes. And she sees a very short respite, like peaceful times and good life after the war. She says it is very, very short, though, because eventually they trick the king as if they are inviting him for negotiations with the European Union, and they of course kill him, which he would know in advance, because he would be a prophet himself as well, so he will know what is happening, but he will go for it because he'll understand that is the path of the destiny, and also he will see it as a last opportunity to again sacrifice his own blood for the atonement of Russia. When the reign of the pious king begins, there will be, for example, no more tall buildings. Also, she said that by then people will understand that actually living above the, was it like, she's not sure, maybe the third or fourth floor, is not even good for health. People should not live in high buildings. 1 or 2 stories are okay, but not more. And actually, many people get sick, nervous, and always headaches or other problems, and they don't even understand that it is because they live too much away from the earth, which is not natural for humans. Also, then agriculture will look like medieval agriculture, and yet will give more yield than now, because people will start understanding the truth, which is that by plowing the earth too much with these gigantic, monstrous industrial plows, that actually destroys this very thin top layer, which is exactly meant for nourishing divine plants. And although in short term, so-called scientists will report that, you see, it gives higher yield, in long term it actually destroys the earth, and then it needs fertilizers and so many other problems. While when people go to the natural wooden plows that don't hurt the earth too much, they will at the end have much more results and will have healthy crops. People will also realize that these aggressive airplanes, which are like monsters tearing up the atmosphere, they have also hurt, like damaged, the atmospheric mantle of our Earth, and they are actually harmful. They should not be used. Other more gentle aircrafts will be there in future. So I personally could not conceive how so much recovery as she describes would be possible in such a short amount of time if the 7 year biblical tribulation comes to be. She doesn't explain that. She just says that the reign of the pious king will be very short, and at that time the Dajjal will be there, but he will be afraid of him and will not show his true colors before they don't kill the king. The only hint about this possible time related seeming inconsistencies that she explained that time will be kind of condensed, and everything will start happening very very fast, like the developments that we see now in years will then be happening in months, and what we see in months will be happening in days. It will be like very very fast. So maybe that's how events will be squeezed into a shorter period of time. I don't know, I'm just trying to guess. And again, as far as how long will this short golden age, so to say, in the middle last, she said extremely short, but she did not specify. Is it like months or years? Absolutely no clue, but she explained that as far as the king is alive, the child will not be even able to set his foot in Russia. And once they eliminate the king, after that, he will be able to enter Russia. Also, this asteroid which hit the Earth, it kind of scraped away a large chunk of the Earth's atmosphere, and the entire atmosphere became very hostile to humans. The sky became very, very low and as if angry to the people. So, as far as the reign of the Antichrist, it was described in previous episodes, and that's how she describes it. He will make lots of promises. He will appear to be a peacemaker, but shortly after that, he will giggle at the face of his followers and tell them, why do you expect me to feed you? The earth doesn't yield. And the water would disappear completely at that point. Even in the oceans, she says, that there will be no water. And in the very deep places in the oceans, still prehistoric, we call them now prehistoric because the penguins lied to us, animals are still there. And when their habitat is destroyed, when there is no water, they will come on land and they will start eating people. So I'm saying prehistoric now because still so many people believe the penguins, at least to some extent, but in those times everybody will know that the penguins are total bluff. Not only about history, about absolutely everything. So at the very, very end, when the advent of Christ is very near, she also sees the sky as very, very low, the clouds touching the top of the trees, and it is extremely hot and there is no water at all. By then, she sees already the marked and unmarked people uh, quite separated. I mean, she saw it really in a physical way, even as a great wall in between them, a wall of mud, which the marked people are trying to cross because the noble people, they're in difficulty, but at least they can dig for some water and they have some food by the mercy of the Lord, while the uh, marked, they are heavily affected by the radiation. They are all bald from the radiation. That was also, by the way, in the Islamic prophecies that this toxic clouds will be affecting the marked people and not so much the noble people. And she saw the marked people also desperately trying to dig near the roots of the trees to find water, but the water itself will run from them, will run away. The way she described them was already really like hell. I don't know, was it symbolic or will it be really like this? But she said, from the first of all, they can't die. It's when the worst starts, God already arranges their fate, even on this earth, to be all really like hell. They want to die, but nobody dies, even without water and food. They just suffer endlessly. And the earthquakes are terrible and constant. They stand near the cliffs where stones fall with the hope that a huge boulder will fall on them and smash them. They try to hang themselves, but nothing works. They cannot even kill themselves. She sees them in groups, going desperately, at least hoping with last last strength left in their terrible emaciated bodies to find some water, but she only sees them finding a lake of blood, and a voice from the skies tells them that this is the blood of all the people you killed, enjoy it. So the way she describes the world in those very last days is quite surreal. So again, I don't know if it is like symbolic, but that's what she saw and that's what she narrates. And as far as the feeling of the people, the unmarked people, they are already very strong by them. Their spirit has been greatly tempered by their resistance, so they're okay, they're holding, they're not desperate, they see difficulty, but they're very strong. While the unmarked people, they can't even believe that all this is happening and remember the world as it is now with more or less normal life and can't even understand how did we reach here, how is this possible, this is just, it should be a dream and everything happened so quickly, and it should be a dream, but yet they suffer in it so terribly and they're like totally confused. But this doesn't really change what they feel. So this is the sad situation, and then they see like northern lights, something, a vision of that sort in the skies. But this time it is worldwide, and although now people think that the northern lights are very beautiful, then they will have the right feeling that something even worse is about to happen. And then in those times there are some animals like something similar to this, and she sees them. They are like the size of like 2 meters and terrible. When they fly, their wings make sound as if they're made of metal, and they bite the marked people, and it's so horrible with those wounds. It's just I'm trying to make this part of the narration short. And then at the very end, Nina saw that it just turned completely dark and an angel came with a sickle, and then the judgment began. So that will be in the future episodes. I feel great changes of wind lately because of two reasons. First of all, just a couple of days ago, I saw that video which I mentioned in the previous episode about Utrok Pavel, and that had an effect of like a cold bucket of water over my head, as it is winter now very sobering for me, and also alerting me that I have to personally work on my own purification urgently. And then I also see what happened in the land of the free, home of the brave, just very recently, the last week, as also a very grave sign. Because, yes, the blonde quiff, although bought and sold by those who finance both sides of all wars, he was, of course, supporting their initiatives, although slowly he was. But still, I think that would be considered mild compared to what the old man will bring, because this new person, I even hesitate saying person, I see him, I don't even see any soul left at all. I see only a ghost and shadow, exactly like a hologram. So that is quite dangerous. That is a very bad sign, because UN is there, and from these lands come the command orders for the entire world practically now. And also millions in that land of the free, they went to the capital to desperately try to support the quiff, which on one side is of course good. Obviously they understand that the other alternative is much worse. But there is an extremely important lesson that we can learn from this incident, is that I believe millions went, or at least I heard so. Some call it the biggest gathering of this type in history in terms of numbers. So this was never organized. There was no such idea to organize anything like this when there was time to defend our liberties, when we still had them. But it was only organized, and the people did support the initiative, they did participate only at the time to defend one of the representatives of the central organizers, just because he's much better than the other option. And this shows very clearly how much people are so engulfed into this idea that some external agency or organization will save them. They are so engulfed to the point that they cling to any organization, even the one which is pissing on them. And this belief that some sort of central organization, and they are all parasitic currently, that is for sure, that some of that will solve the problem of parasitism. People will not give up on this. And I believe, when I was telling you about the asteroid, I forgot to mention that even though it will have such an immense impact on Earth, and it will come in the middle of the Great War, Nina said that people will practically not notice. They will be so hypnotized. They will fight like hypnotized so much by all these ideas, of course, put in their heads by some sort of central organization, which they will believe is better than another one, that they will just vaguely, with their peripheral vision, hear in the news that half of the world is submerged, but those who remain, they will continue actively fighting. And getting back to the story of the capital of the land of the brave, recently, I believe a couple of millions, when they are in the cold, and actually suffered quite inconvenience to find no place to stay and be in the cold for a long time, to stand. But that shows how many more millions actually also, although remained at home, believed that somebody who cannot prevent the activation of his own Twitter account will be able to help them to return to normal, honest life. If he wanted and he could do that, he would organize this type of gatherings for the really important problems during his reign. Especially the Twitter incident clearly shows that he was simply a puppet who improvised too much, to the point that the puppet masters on the top almost made their hands visible in the sky as they were pulling the ropes when the puppet came alive. That's why now they are taking no chance. The next puppet has no soul at all. But the fact that so many millions believed the quiff, it means that this type of deception works very well. And in few short years, when the real Dajjal comes, they will use the same type of deception for sure. And people will believe that he's the good one then, big time they will believe. Especially that the black magic hypnosis will be much stronger then. And that is why I was so much moved by the Otrok Pavel prophecies, because they're mainly about this type of hypnosis. And most likely, I consider to make the next episode about them, because many things could be developing much, much earlier than I expected. And also, the silencing of everybody who speaks the truth might happen much earlier, at any time at this point. So do not delay to download at least the audio of this entire series. And probably for me very soon a different chapter in my life will open. The reason for which it was arranged by the Lord for me to publish this for you is because I had to learn it better myself. And also I have lots of things which I need still to polish in my personality. So I will try to do as much as possible until it is relatively peaceful and we have food and nature around. Because later on, when all around it will be only war, debris, and starvation and screams, it will be a more suitable time to have a tempered spirit instead of trying to temper it at that time. Or if I manage to learn my lessons even now, before the worst starts, maybe the destiny will say, well, she's learned enough, she doesn't need to experience that directly. I will say a few words along these lines as well in the episode about judgment. So I wish you a nice day. I wish you to experience the grace of Lord. And if you wonder, what can you do? Starting as of today, the answer is reduce gadgets around. Phones, computers. If you cannot remove completely, reduce to bare minimum. So some people have been asking me how to avoid the fix, since many countries have already laws in place which allows them to make it mandatory. Some people even consider immigrating, relocating to countries with more favorable and liberal laws. However, I think this type of research is actually a waste of time, and this is why. Even if we find a country which currently has more liberal laws, this means that they are simply not obeying the bosses very well, and probably the bosses will take measures. It's just a question of time, and the laws may change. There is no guarantee. And then you would have wasted your time and energy again trying to rely on government help. Eventually, this is what stands behind this idea that I will find some sort of better government somewhere. And indeed, a couple of prophets do mention the type of people who will relocate to another country thinking that this will provide some sort of safety. It will not, they clearly told us. But yet, on the other hand, it doesn't mean that any relocation to another country, all relocations will be a waste of time and energy. Definitely not. Even I myself, I pray every day that the Lord will give me wisdom where exactly I should be, because I may still have two options. Now in the winter I'm physically unable to go anywhere if I wanted to, but in spring it might be still possible to travel without permits, and I may have the option. That's why I started praying now, with the hope to receive wisdom by then. Why I do not advise basing your decisions on research of the current laws. Like, see for example Brazil. Initially their president was quite wise, but then the big bosses on the top managed to do what they want, and now, if I'm not mistaken, in Brazil it can be made mandatory, as far as I understand. I read so in the news. You may consider going to places where it will be impossible to enforce such laws, like the Amazon jungle. Some 10 or 15 years ago, I heard from somebody who lived in the most northern parts of, was it Sweden or Norway, that over there it looks like it will be possible as well. The information could be somewhat outdated. But you will find out that the natural life there is so harsh on you that I don't know if you could adapt. Personally, I wouldn't return to the Amazon jungle, although I wasn't even in the deep jungle. I was just in the outskirts where so-called civilization and jungle meet, and even that was more than enough for me. I wouldn't venture there myself. And the prophets knew very well that we would be in front of such a dilemma, and that's why they left some preferable locations for us. I have listed them in a general way in all the episodes, and I have listed links so that the people in the respective regions can do more detailed search, more local. And in general, the advice again is move to the countryside, away from any cities, away from busy highways, away from major railways. In some cases, we hear advice stay away also from country borders. Like, for example, Gottfried advised that all the Italian and French borders will be dangerous as well, because the gangs will be coming from those countries to the neighboring countries as well. And then just get a low profile property as far as possible from any infrastructure. The general rule is that looking to immigrate is not a solution to everything. For example, I'm abroad, and one of the things I don't like about being abroad is that, for example, the locals here, they can refuse health insurance, but foreigners cannot. I'm obliged to pay it all the time. So for now it is just the insurance, but it seems they have this tendency to require more paperwork and more things from foreigners. So the answer is the prophets did not say simply do not relocate. This is not what they said, but relocating just because the current laws are more favorable at the moment really doesn't seem advisable based on the prophecies. Yes, if you have, let's say, a property abroad, which is exactly what you need, at a secluded place, far from infrastructure. Of course, that is far more preferable than remaining in the city in your homeland. The next episode will be one of the most important episodes, exactly what to do now. Prophecies made very recently, months ago. They are an urgent call for everybody who will want to keep their soul sovereign, to move to the countryside as soon as possible, and break as much as possible connection with any technology. I will explain why in the next video. The time is over when one can browse the internet endlessly, or even look, is there a new earthquake? Is it really the end times? It is too late for that. The time has come that we'll have to save our souls on our own or in small groups. Decades ago, Trop Vyacheslav warned us that in the beginning they will say it is all voluntary, but within months they will start stopping people on the roads and forcing them. So until now, I always attributed this prophecy to the very end about the proper mark. But now, after seeing the message from Otrok Pavel, it seems that by the end of this year, they will be already forcefully fixing people on the roads. So the exact question was, what shall I do? I don't want the fix, but they are making it mandatory. The answer is directly from Trok Vyacheslav. He said, the people who don't want it, they will have to stay at home. They will not go on the roads anymore. This is exactly what he said. He said the people who really don't want it, they will absolutely avoid proximity to big cities and roads.